All right, so we need to talk a little bit about what Trump recently mentioned about having a fourth term. Now, a lot of people are going to look at this and say, "Oh, that's a joke," and he's just, messing around and saying all these different things. But tell me why. He has posted in the last like 2, 3 days a whole slew of election-related things regarding 2020. Now, of course, we all know that 2020. Depending on what side of the fence you are on, you could think that it is stolen, it was completely rigged, and all that stuff. And people, depending on how the narrative goes, have said, "Oh, you're substantiating the narrative that this was a fraudulent election wrongfully," meaning that you think that this is true, but it's not. And so a lot of people are on different sides of the fence. And this is what I mentioned in terms of what your perception of reality is and what you may believe as being true, but depending on the evidence or what you perceive as being evidence or the lack thereof can make you draw certain conclusions. So this is a very good example of how you need to have discernment in this hour moving into the end times, because a lot of us are going to look at this and say, "Oh, it's true, it's not true, was it really stolen, was it not, who knows," and all that stuff. So I believe, and of course I'm of the one, and I've said this in the last 4 or 5 years, that I believe that God has given me confirmation that the 2020 election was in fact stolen, and that a lot of the persecution, or rather the narrative behind it, has been confused, and it's drawn people astray in some sense. And that the real truth, if you believe in the Lord and you can pray to Him and really want discernment and truth out of it, that you can get that truth. And you may not see complete, quote unquote, evidence of it, but there is a lot to say behind that in terms of how you go, neck deep into some of the research and then draw, in some sense, your own conclusion without overtly being told what is true and what isn't, and depending on who it's from and all that. So this is the day and age we're living in. Depending on who says something, who proclaims something, you can have a bias to say, "Oh, that's not true," or "It is true, it's false information, it's fake news," and all that stuff. You're propagating misinformation and all that. So let's take a look at what he actually said and what he's shown, because what he's posted has been, I've counted at least, I think, 15 to 20 posts. And so I'm going to just rapid fire some of this stuff, and then we'll quickly just talk about it. So this was all in the last several days, and some within a span of 1 to 2 days. And the one post he made that is getting everybody sort of riled up is, "Record numbers all over the place. Should I try for a fourth term?" So we'll get back to that here in a second. But look at some of these other posts, and I'm just going to not read all of them, but this is talking about the systematic problems of Georgia and the voter irregularities, and we all know that narrative. This here, and Trump is just retruthing a lot of posts from other MAGA / independent journalists and people that are really into research, especially Q and various other things. So he's been very overt about some of that. So this person saying that, again, this is Trump retruthing MAGA Storm here. She actually did the homework. Now she's admitting Republicans are right in terms of illegal immigrants are voting and turning states blue. I don't believe it. And then you just need a driver's license, and you can just basically vote and all that stuff. So 14 states don't require ID at polls. 12 states require documentation, but not photo ID. So conclusion, already over 50% of the country without strict voting documentation. So this is not new news, but again, Trump reposting it. And then this is a video, I won't go through the full thing, but just again, of the same corrupt voting narrative here. And then Pennsylvania 2020 election, there were over 400,000 election errors alone, and just total votes being removed from Trump, and tracking some of these things. Another post here, and again, this is all within like a day or two. Just rapid fire. Election officials blow the lid off the massive amount of deliberate and orchestrated fraud during the 2020 election in Michigan. And then another post, he mentions a USPS subcontractor where they had his affidavit or his testimony to say that there was no clerical error, but that all of these ballots were being moved across state lines, and that they had already been filled out with addresses, and that they had later vanished without a trace. So this is a truck driver testifying about that. And then in other areas, votes being flipped live on TV, and a lot of numbers, backing that. And the forensic evidence of 2020 election reveals systematic deletion of election records. Again, this is Trump reposting this, and then over 89,000 illegal votes were counted in the Nevada 2020 election. And again, there's a lot of detail behind here. This is a video where it's going through testimony and just various research that people have put together, as well as just in the election system and the congressional testimony and what people are saying. 17,000 dead people found in obituaries voted in Michigan 2020 presidential election. Again, he's reposting these. Fake and fraudulent polling should be virtually a criminal offense. And this talking about the 2020 election, showing polls were knowingly wrong and just all this stuff, and being calling out some of the news agencies. And then just, there's more of these. Again, this is all posted within the same several days. This is Fulton County, Georgia. The 350,000 early votes were not signed. There's, no tape, no evidence, a lot of different things here. And then another one here about China and other outside election interference and ballot printing operations, just various things in the election system, the Smartmatic Dominion software, and then just another one, Dominion voting machines, allegedly switching a staggering 435,000 votes from Trump to Biden, and then just many more, right? Election voter fraud from Nevada. And he's saying here, these people should be in jail for a long time, totally rigged election. And this post specifically is absolutely huge. Listen to what this guy said in terms of summarizing what he said at Davos when he traveled there. And this is in the last few days. Trump recently stated in Davos, Switzerland, on the world stage, that prosecutions are coming for the stolen 2020 election. He said, quote, if the 2020 US presidential election weren't rigged, it was a rigged election. Everybody now knows that. They found out. People will soon be prosecuted for what they did. It's probably breaking news, but it should be. It was a rigged election. You can't have rigged elections, end quote. So he said this in front of all the world leaders. He said this in a confident manner, and he said that people will be prosecuted for what they did. Big post here. Now, I'm pointing this out because, again, this is crime to, and again, if it's true, again, right, if you want to assume that there's all this evidence and all that stuff, if it's true and if it happened, then this is a huge crime. This is literally trying to subvert the election system of the United States of America through all this rigging and concerted, syndicate effort behind it. Then there are consequences for this. But the optics are important. So Trump and the guys on this side can't be looking like some dictator and trying to persecute, prosecute, doing all this stuff. So there's got to be some right way to go about this in terms of the optics and what people and how people will digest it, so that they don't go and protest to such a degree that it's wrongfully done and it's overthrowing basically the government, because people are so angry and emotional about how it's being done. And so I believe that from the courts of heaven, when you look down, that something as bad as this, if it was wrong, and if it's true, again, if it's true, then it's going to be dealt with, because this is a huge deal. And Trump, just this week, has just been rapid firing, just again getting it on people's radars again, getting people to think about it, because again, there's a reason that he does some of these things, preparing people for the narrative, preparing people to research and talk about it, such that when he brings it up and when other things happen, whether it's the military, whether it's certain AG and attorney generals and prosecutors, whoever it is that's going to allow this to come to light, it's going to be done in some way that it's digestible, at least to the majority of the public, because there's a certain percentage of people, they're never going to accept it. Q mentions that I think like 5% of people are never going to accept the truth, even if it comes out from either side, because they've just been so fixated and anchored on their own basically systematic understanding of their paradigm of the world. So this, I believe, is going to happen at some point, especially in Trump's term. But again, like Trump said, people have to go to jail. They have to be prosecuted through some of these things. And we're going to see a lot of this come to light. And as for Trump talking about a fourth term, what does that mean? Logistically, logically, and in terms of many of us talking about how there was a system of devolution. There was a system of a continuity of government that had taken place because Trump, he had a duty, an oath to protect the Constitution. And it looks like on one side, it looks like some kind of overthrow, like some dictatorship, some kind of, pulling strings to say, hey, I'm going to implement martial law and take over the government. But he had to do it in such a way that it was legal, it was necessary, but at the same time, it wouldn't cause such a ruckus that people are going to oust Trump, because again, it would look optically bad. So he did something. Many of us believe it, that he suspended the Constitution or allowed a continuity of government, some kind of devolution to be in place, allowed this fake Biden to come into office, pause possibly the government for that long, and we've seen a movie being played out this entire time, such that it would wake people up, it would get people on the right page, on the same page, and then now we're seeing in his quote-unquote second term, or maybe now his third term, what this would mean in terms of prosecuting and allowing justice to go forth. And so if this fourth term were to take place, what would that mean? Because there is some kind of constitutional way to allow this to happen. Is he just teasing us? Is he just saying certain things? But whatever the case may be, legally, once we find out what happened, all of the executive orders, all of the military law, the law and war manual, right? All of this stuff is going to be brought out. People have already studied it. People have written books about it. But legally and from a mainstream perspective, what is that going to look like? That's the question as we move into this next year, 2026, and everything beyond this. So just want to give you guys this update. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I also want to mention that we are fighting a good fight in the federal courts. You guys know that we're fighting a religious discrimination case in the U.S. federal court. I'm also trying to support myself, my team, through the business and creative infrastructure that we are doing. I have teammates, people under me that are working. I have a legal team doing a lot of stuff. We're fighting a big fight. I would love your guys' financial support. We are at the next phase. We're trying to move forward. It's very expensive with all these different costs, and so I'm listener supporter. You guys know that. I don't take sponsorships, but if you guys want to help me out, the link is down below, givesendgo.com/chrisyoonyt. PayPal, Zelle, and Venmo is also deeply appreciated. You guys really love to make our target goals. If you guys want to help me out, would love you guys' support. Thank you guys so much. More to come. Talk to you guys very soon.